My baby daddy's fiance wants me to carry her child. I, 26 female, and my ex, 28 male, I'll call him Harry, met when we were in high school. We met through a mutual friend and instantly connected. We started dating not long after I finished high school, and everything seemed to be going extremely fast. We moved in together after college, and 2 years after moving in, I fell pregnant with our daughter. He was automatically excited to be a father, and I was thrilled that we were becoming a little family. That was until during labor. I got a call from Harry's friend telling me that Harry was supposed to go meet him, but didn't show. I told him I had tried getting in touch with him myself. As I was about to give birth, we then became worried. After I had given birth, Harry's friend rang me to tell me that Harry is at his affair partner's house. I was shocked. I hung up and started crying. Thankfully, my mom was with me and calmed me down. Harry tried to explain himself, but I didn't care. I immediately packed my bags, took my name off the lease, and went to live with my parents. That was 5 years ago, and I am now in a much better place physically and mentally. Me and Harry co-parent our daughter. He is engaged to the woman he cheated on me with, which stung, but I got over it. They have 2 kids together, but once his fiance had their second child, she found out due to complications with their birth, she couldn't have any more kids. They were both crushed, and I sympathized with them, mainly out of trying to keep the peace for my daughter. 2 days ago, I got sent a message from Harry's fiance asking me if we could meet at a local cafe. To me, this was odd. We never really spoke, unless at parties or gatherings for a few minutes, but I usually spoke to Harry regarding everything else. I replied sure, and we met yesterday morning. As soon as I walked in, her and Harry sat up at the table, so I automatically knew something was up. I walked over and sat down, and they said they were just going to come out with it and say it. Harry spoke up and said, "Due to us not being able to have another child, we were wondering if you would be our surrogate." I was stunned. I laughed and said this was a joke, right? To which his fiance replied, "We are dead serious. We want at least 5 babies, so we need you to be our surrogate for us for the next 3 babies. I laughed more and said, "You want me to carry 3 babies for you?" I literally couldn't stop laughing at the audacity to ask such a thing of me. His fiance started crying and called me so many names. I genuinely think she was making some up along the way. She stormed out, and Harry turned to me and said, "This is why we didn't work. You're a horrible human being. You're so heartless. We asked for one thing from you and you laugh in our faces?" As to which I responded, "No, we didn't work because you're a cheating scumbag and you have 2 kids, 3 including our daughter. You want a surrogate? Then save all the money you spent on your fiance's rich lifestyle and get one." I left the cafe and went to my mom's house. When I got there, I was bombarded with calls and texts from my ex, his fiance, his mom and dad and sisters, and even the fiance's family, all calling me an asshole. My family are on my side, but honestly, I just want to know if I was a bit harsh on them. Am I the asshole for just laughing at them? No. The audacity to come to you after everything he put you through and ask if you're willing to carry a child between him and somebody who destroyed your family. And for him to put it on you, "Oh, this is why I cheated." No, you were looking for any excuse that you could possibly find to not hold yourself accountable. And you should be so happy that you dodged that bullet. It's absolutely ridiculous that they would give out your phone number so that their families can just come and attack you, because you got me so f***ed up if you think you're gonna come in and attack me over your guys'
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid, and I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
Extremely toxic best friend part 2. So pretty much her excuse for that was, "Oh, well, he said that he was gonna leak my nudes if I didn't send him them again." Which was a lie, because literally half the school already had her nudes. So then I started talking to this other boy. And he lived like right down the street from her. So she was like, if you want to go to his house, you can. And I was like, are you sure? And she said, yeah, just go tell my mom. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and told her mom where I was going and went over his house. So I walked back to her house and she literally locked me out. Like her mom had to come open the door for me to let me in. And she was like, oh, it's a good thing you came back when you did. Because I was going to drive you home now and tell your dad everything that you did. And she goes, I don't think you guys should be together because you're unexperienced. And she would always tell me how he flirts with her all the time. So after our friendship ended, she goes, I just felt like it was always a competition between me and you.
Am I wrong for giving my son non-vegan food behind my wife's back? I'm 32 male and my wife is 33 female. We've been married for 8 years and have a 12-year-old son together. About 6 years ago, my wife decided to go vegan. She was sent the documentary Dominion by a vegan friend of hers, and ever since she said non-vegan food is revolting and refuses to eat it. After a long conversation, I agreed to go vegetarian but be vegan in the house around her, which she was very happy with. She also decided that our son should be vegan, which after seeing a dietitian, I also agreed with. Things have been fine with this arrangement until a few months ago when I began finding wrappers from non-vegan candy and even burgers from McDonald's in my son's school bag. I had a conversation with my son and he confessed he felt lonely and excluded eating vegan around his friends, saying they always had better candy than he did and it wasn't fair. That's when I made a decision. Am I wrong for giving my son non-vegan food behind my wife's back? I decided I didn't want him spending his own money on snacks and throwing out the vegan snacks we actually bought him instead of buying games. Or just anything else, and it didn't make sense to me, but I also know the way my wife feels about non-vegan products. So on our way to football practice, I began buying my son what he wanted. Well, long story short, of course my wife recently found out and she completely flipped out. She called me an animal abuser, enabler, and a few other names and said I was corrupting our son. Now she isn't speaking to me and my son panicked and told her that I bought the snacks for him and he had no idea they weren't vegan. Which honestly, I don't blame him for that, he just doesn't want to be in trouble with mom. Top comment says, not wrong. I think my answer at this point would be our son is old enough to decide what he wants to eat and what dietary preferences are. If we put him in a situation where he feels he has to hide things from us, that's on us. Am I wrong for letting my son eat my husband's birthday cake before he came home from work? It was my husband's birthday yesterday, so I planned a birthday dinner with both of our families. Unfortunately, he basically missed the whole thing because his meeting overran by a lot. The thing is, our son is 3 and I have him in a routine, so I made sure that he ate at his regular time. We did get my husband a cake and I didn't want to give him a load of sugar right before bed because I knew that he wouldn't sleep. So I decided to let him have some of the cake once he finishes dinner. Now, I don't think it's a big deal because my son's the one who wanted to buy the cake as a present for his dad. Otherwise, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have got one because my husband isn't a big fan of cake. But my sister-in-law, who's my husband's brother's wife, is the one who turned this into an issue because she told me it's rude. You don't cut the cake without the birthday boy and I should make my son wait. Especially because my husband would be home soon. Am I wrong for letting my son eat my husband's birthday cake before he came home? My sister-in-law turned it into an issue saying it's rude for us to cut the cake without the birthday boy. And that I should make my son wait because my husband would be home soon. Now I know my husband and soon could mean anywhere from 20 minutes to 3 hours. And to be frank, I wasn't going to wait that long, so I gave my son the cake. Multiple people told me I shouldn't have done it after my sister-in-law spoke up, and I'll be honest. It was getting under my skin because why should my son miss out because his dad is late? Top comment says, you're definitely wrong. The birthday cake was for your husband, not your son. If the timing wasn't going to work out, you could have just told your son he could have some tomorrow. And maybe just given him another snack. And if I was your husband, I would have been hurt.
I didn't attend my son's wedding. I instead spent the evening with his ex-wife. Quick backstory. After graduating high school, my son moved 3 states away for college. At 19, he married a girl he met. I tried convincing him to wait because I personally felt he was too immature. They both dropped out and moved back here to his hometown. At 20, they had their first child, a beautiful little girl. 16 months later, my daughter-in-law gave birth to their second child, a little boy. After the first baby, my wife and I noticed our daughter-in-law wasn't happy. We both thought it was postpartum depression related. Just after the second arrived, my son and his wife separated. She would bring the kids over for a visit. It was then that she began unloading on us. I know there's two sides to every story, but considering I know my son, I believed her. I sat my son down numerous times to speak with him regarding his marriage. He refused to take responsibility, blamed her for everything, even when I directly pointed out where he was the sole problem. They got into counseling, and for a year, things were okay on the surface. Our daughter-in-law filed for divorce. My son, 3 days later, was on Facebook announcing his new girlfriend. A month later, they were engaged. My son had forced his then-wife to become a permanent stay-at-home mom at the birth of their first child. She, of course, had no other family or friends here. She knew no one aside from us. She had nowhere to go with 2 small children. Unbeknownst to our son, my wife and I helped her financially and got her an apartment. Before the divorce was even finalized, we received a wedding invitation. I made it clear to my son I would not be attending and they would not have my blessings. His mother told him that she would see to it that I would attend. I stayed consistent in my decision. I also asked him not to bring his fiance around our house out of respect for the mother of his children. The wedding happened. The night before, my wife gave me the final push. I did not attend. Our daughter also did not attend for the same reasons. My wife picked up our grandkids, got them dressed, and attended the wedding. My daughter and I decided to spend the evening with his ex. I couldn't imagine her sitting alone while her kids attended their father's wedding. She was taken aback that I didn't end up attending his wedding. We took her out to distract her mind. I just wanted her to know that she'll always be considered family to us. My daughter also made a joke they can drop the in-law status and just be sisters now. She was very tearfully grateful. I realized just how badly she needed our support, and specifically on that night. The next morning, my son called to tell me how much of a horrible father I am for not attending his wedding. A few days later, he caught wind that I spent the wedding evening with his ex. He said that was the ultimate form of betrayal, and further, myself and his sister would have to earn a relationship with him on his terms only. I love this because just because your son is your son does not mean you have to support all of his actions. You gotta call them out when they're wrong. And you gotta stick with what's right. You know? I don't give a shit who you're marrying. If you screw someone else in the meanwhile, I'm not gonna be okay with that. He didn't even let his divorce get finalized before he was marrying another chick. Priorities. You have 2 children you need to take care of. You're okay with your baby mama and your kids not having a home, being all alone just so you can get remarried? Huh?
Am I in the wrong for calling off our wedding after my sister-in-law shaved my beard? I'm 28 male and my fiance 25 female, who we'll call Lexi, are a happy couple of 6 years and engaged for 1, or so I thought. For context, my fiance's sister, 32 female, we'll call her Sally, has always been hostile towards me and would rarely speak to me, and when she did, it was because her parents were around. Sally is Lexi's rock because she got her through a tough time during college, and since then, Lexi has told Sally everything about everything. We've had problems with this in the past, due to her telling Sally about personal things in my childhood I'd only told a few people, which led to us not speaking for 3 months during COVID when she'd only leave our room for food and go to the toilet. And recently, we hadn't had an argument in a year plus until 3 nights ago when she mentioned that she liked me to shave my beard. For context, I have a very thick beard that I've been growing out for 8 years and I'm very proud of. So I, of course, told Lexi that I wouldn't be shaving my beard, to which she stormed off to the kitchen and slammed her wine glass into the sink, smashing it and a plate in the process. I immediately stood up and asked her what the fuck she was doing. She then spun around and screamed that I'm a selfish a-hole because I won't shave my beard, and ran into our bedroom and slammed the door. I ended up sleeping on the couch and woke up around 4 in the morning to Sally with a razor trying to shave my beard, so I pushed her off of me. Lexi then ran to check on Sally whilst I was looking at a big patch Sally had taken off of my beard. Then I went upstairs and packed a bag whilst Lexi shouted at me for hurting Sally. I told her to F off and that the wedding was off, and walked out of the house and drove an hour to my parents' house where I've been staying since the incident. Earlier today, I got a text from Sally saying that I was selfish for not shaving my beard because when I go down on Lexi, it feels weird. I haven't replied to her. My family thinks that I should break off the relationship, but her family said I should just shave it all and move on. I've gotten 99 plus text calls from Lexi saying things like, don't leave, let's have sex one more time, I'm pregnant. She's trying to baby trap me, I think. So what should I do, and am I wrong? Story time about how a serial killer targeted and followed me. One night I was driving my station wagon from Colorado to Arizona to visit my mom. I had a desk in the back that my mom had given me. I've always been scared driving at night because I have this irrational fear that someone in the backseat's going to get me. I was on an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around. That's when this red pickup truck comes up behind me and starts flashing their lights while also honking their horn. I thought maybe something was wrong with my car or with the desk in the back. Why else would he be so insistent on me pulling over? I pulled to the side of the freeway and got out of my car. He pulled up directly behind me. I got out of my car to go inspect what was going on, and I got about halfway. That's when it hit me. Why was he still honking and flashing his lights at me when I'm out of my car? He started getting out of his truck, but I couldn't see him because his headlights were shining in my eyes. He didn't say anything and was heading towards me when something in the pit of my stomach screamed at me to get back in my car. I jumped back in and sped off. My phone was dead, I didn't have a charger, and I was terrified. I had no idea what to do. The next exit was 45 miles away, but he followed right behind me the entire time. Part 2 of how a serial killer targeted and followed me. I took the first exit to go to a crowded grocery store with a laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its lights flashing. I figured if there was an ambulance, then eventually a police officer would show up. The man had followed me and parked in the grocery store parking lot. He stayed there intently watching me the whole time. I was so scared I didn't even want to get out of my car. I felt like an idiot if I would have to tell someone what was happening. We waited there an hour until he finally seemed to give up and leave. I was so relieved, but I waited a while longer and then continued my drive. I was paranoid and watchful the entire time for red trucks. Fast forward about 5 to 6 years and I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type of crime show with my partner, and what story pops up? One about a man on the exact stretch of highway with a red pickup truck who used those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them all. I'm so glad something in my gut told me to keep driving that night.
This is the story time of the weirdest date that I've ever been on. Emphasis on fucking weird. I met this guy on Hinge, and normally I don't go on dates because I kind of hate people. Unless we have like an insane connection, I'm like, I don't want to fucking do this. But of course, I'm like, oh my god, we had such a fucking insane connection. No, but like we did have a really good connection. Him and I were texting a bunch, like we're really hitting it off, all is well. Did I not do my green concealer? I'm just extra fucking red today, love that. So he's like, let's go to dinner Friday night, 9:15, this sushi restaurant. It's like such a nice sushi restaurant, so I'm like, fuck, like I've been wanting to try it, whatever. I'm going on this date, I'm gonna do this. You guys have to keep in mind, he was texting me telling me how much he loves dates, he loves planning dates, he loves dates to be like a day-long thing. So I'm like, okay, whatever, but we're getting dinner, who cares? He texts me and he's like, God, I wish we could do something before dinner, like, let's do something before dinner, like I wanna see you before then. I'm like, okay. He's like, let's get matcha at 5:15, like, meet you at this place. Because every man thinks it's fucking cute to be like, let's get matcha, because the name of my podcast is Midday Matcha. So they're like, let's get matcha. You know how many fucking times I've been to matcha? I don't even like matcha that much. Like, I should have just named my podcast Midday Caviar, so these motherfuckers are taking me to caviar instead of... So I've consumed so much matcha. So whatever, him and I, we get to matcha, and it's good. We're having a great time. But the matcha place closes at 6 p.m. But we're in, like, the middle of, like, a deep conversation, so we don't even get out of the matcha place until the lady's like, get the fuck out. It's 6 p.m. and our dinner's at, like, 9:15. In my head, I'm thinking, oh, like, of course, like, this man has something planned because he said that he loves all day dates and stuff, and he loves planning, like, he's so fucking excited about these dates. And I'm like, that's just like a weird gap between 5 to 9, you know, like he definitely has something else planned. We get out of the matcha shop, we're still in such deep convo, and we're walking for like a while now, 10 minutes, and I'm like, where is he leading me? But I realize, like, I'm kind of like leading him. We're walking so far, we end up on the West Side fucking highway. You don't know what the West Side highway is? It's a highway in New York. Like, I'm on the west side of the fucking highway with this man, and I'm like, where are we going? Like, what are we doing? He's so deep in his story he's telling me, and I'm like, why am I on the West Side fucking highway at like 6:30 p.m. in heels and a white corset? Like, what is happening? Go to part 2. So we're on the West Side Highway, which is not a place you ever go on a date. Like, that's fucking weird. Well, I'm in heels and a corset. And I look at him and I'm like, okay, like, should we grab a drink or something before dinner? He's like, oh, like, I have to change before dinner. And I'm like, change before dinner? So I'm like, okay. Because in my head, I'm like, okay, so why the fuck did we get matcha? You know what I mean? Like, why did we could have waited till dinner. And now I'm walking on the West Side fucking highway with this random man, and it's like 6 p.m. and our dinner's not for like another 4 hours. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking lose it. Like, I'm gonna lose it. So I say to him, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go home. I'll freshen up before dinner, and like, you go home and you change before dinner. He's like, perfect. I'm like, I'm close to home, so like, I'll just walk there. He continues to fucking walk with me. He's literally not shutting the fuck up about this certain story he's telling me, like, and I'm just in my head so frustrated in my head, and I'm like, Livy, this is exactly why you don't go on fucking dates. I'm like, why did I wear a white corset and heels to fucking matcha? Like, I thought we were going like to, I'm like, I can't stand this. So we get to my apartment, I'm like, okay, bye, like, see you soon. Go upstairs, my roommate's like, wait, why are you home? Like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I hate my date, I'm not going to dinner, like, I'm not going to dinner. I'm so annoyed. And I tell her everything. I'm like, we met and got matcha, and like, we were just walking on the West Side fucking highway, and like, I thought he was he's leading me somewhere. So annoyed at this point because I'm just like, what was that? I'm like, I don't want to go to dinner. And everyone's like, no, like, you have to go to dinner, because I called my sister, I texted my friends, and they're like, just still go to dinner. Like, yeah, it's weird, but still go to dinner. I'm in my head, and I'm like, maybe this isn't weird, and I just think this is weird, because, you know, like, I don't go on dates, so I don't know if this is weird. I just compare everything that, like, a man does to my roommate's boyfriend. Let's call him Zach. I'm like, would Zach do this to my roommate on a date when they first met? Like, would Zach do this on a first date? I'm like, no, Zach wouldn't fucking do this. Like, if my roommate came home and, like, told me Zach did this on their first date, I'd be like, okay, don't see that fucking weirdo again. And, like, I was just so in my head about it. I was like, what was the reason for the like, what was the reason? I've just never had a date with an intermission in it. I ended up going to dinner, even though I, like, honestly really did not want to. I was like, Livy, don't be a fucking bitch. Like, don't cancel last minute on somebody. I'm glad I did go on the date, because now he's my boyfriend. Kidding. That man is not my fucking boyfriend, and we both knew that. It was still, like, a fun dinner, even though it was fucking weird that he took me for matcha, and then we had, like, it was just still fucking weird. Like, I cannot wrap my head around it, and I'm like, why the fuck did he do that? That is the story time of the weirdest date that I have ever been on. What was the reason for the matcha? Like, let a bitch know. I am supposed to be in Miami right now, but I had the most hectic day. It all starts with last night. There's a couple of things you need to keep in mind before I tell this story. The number one being that I fly standby. I had a 7 a.m. flight this morning, so I normally book my Ubers before I go to the airport. And I was with my sister, I was with Izzy, and I was like, I don't know why, I just, like, don't want to book this Uber right now. Like, I don't want to schedule this Uber, I'm not really sure. And then I was, like, in my head, because I'm going through something, fucking obviously I'm literally going through something. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go to Miami, but I was like, no, like, Miami would be good for me. Like, I should go to fucking Miami, you know what I mean? I checked the flight before I go to bed yesterday, and it's like, there's literally like 30 open seats. I'm like, okay, perfect, I'll be good, because I can check the seats for standby. I'm like, perfect, I'll be good. I wake up at 4:30 in the fucking morning this morning, and immediately get like this weird urge. I'm like, I don't feel like I should be going to Miami. Like, I don't know why. I look at the flight, and all the seats are booked, and there's 18 people on the standby list. Like, last time I checked, there was probably like 10 people. Now there's 18 people on the standby list, and every single seat is like taken. I'm like, okay, that's fucking crazy for that to happen overnight, but like, I'm new to standby, like, is what it is. I'm like, sure that this happens a lot. I just kept feeling this feeling that was like, don't go to the airport right now. Like, just whatever you do, like, don't go to the airport right now. I was like, okay, whatever. So I look at the other flights. There's one that leaves at noon, and there's like 50 open seats. There's so many. Okay, I'm being dramatic. There's like literally 17, 20 open seats, and not a long standby list whatsoever. So I'm like, okay, perfect. Like, I'll get on that one and I'll just sleep in and I can leave later. I check an hour before I go to the airport. I'm like, perfect. Like, there's still 20 fucking seats. I'm like, there's still 20 open seats. Like, this is so good. Mind you, since I do fly standby, I kind of show up to the airport late. Like, I don't need to be there the 2.5 or whatever, the 2 fucking hours before that everyone like tells you to, because I literally find out during boarding if I'm getting on the fucking plane or not, so I don't need to be there that early. I get through security, I check this flight, and almost every seat is taken. I'm like, what the fuck? Am I just like not meant to go to Miami this weekend? Like, I'm just so fucking confused. So I know it's Memorial Day weekend and flights are super busy, but I was checking between Fort Lauderdale and Miami, so I'm like checking all these fucking flights. But this is where it gets like weird. I end up not getting on that flight by one fucking person, like literally one person, whatever. They roll me over to the next flight. Mind you, now I'm extra in my head, like, should I be going to Miami? Like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I don't know, I've never experienced this with standby. And I was going to buy a plane ticket for like $200. I checked to go buy it, it goes to like $500 for a one-way. I'm like, never fucking mind, we're good. I roll over to the next flight, and I'm waiting for this next flight. Meet a friend. Hi, April. We're like doing the standby shit together. She's so fucking nice. And as we're waiting to figure out if we get on the flight, like, I can see the seat map and there's like open seats, so I'm like, perfect, like, I'm gonna get on this fucking flight. Like, need to keep in mind, my dead friend is a pigeon to me. That sounds so, she's a pigeon. Go to part 2. So my dead friend's a pigeon to me. As I'm waiting to see if I'm gonna get on this flight, a fucking pigeon is walking through the Newark airport. Why the fuck would there be a pigeon in the airport? Like, pigeon, what the fuck are you doing there? Since my friend had passed, everyone always knows she's a pigeon. My roommate will walk into the room and be like, oh my god, she's here, because a pigeon is like, she's a fucking pigeon. She would be like pissed to know that I think she's a pigeon, but she's a fucking pigeon. I'm like, what is this bitch trying to tell me? Like, what the fuck is she trying to tell me? I think I'm getting getting on this flight to go to Miami. And then who's running the gate says absolutely nothing and just closes the boarding. And we're like looking at our apps and we're like, wait, there's like open seats. Like there's fucking open seats. And we're like, okay, like guess I didn't get on that fucking flight. Which like, that's fine. I understand this is like the standby process. Kind of weird. Not sure what he's doing, but like go off, king. The main reason this is all so fucking weird is because I've been talking to my dead friend a lot recently. I've been yelling at her like, why do you send me the worst men ever? Like all yesterday, I just like talked to the air and like I talked to her a lot. And I've never had like the gut feeling that's like telling me not to do something and I get confused with my gut feeling and anxiety, like whatever. But I'm like, why is she in the airport with me? Like what the fuck is she trying to say? Then roll over to the next flight and me and my friend April were like doing this whole thing together, and April's like, I'm gonna fly into West Palm Beach. I'm like, maybe I'll fly into West Palm Beach. And she's like, yeah, I'll just drop you off in like Fort Lauderdale and then you could go to like Miami from Fort Lauderdale. I'm like, oh my God, perfect. That's like a 2-hour fucking drive. I'm like, this is like a lot, you know what I mean? Like this is just like a fucking lot to get to Miami. And like in the back of my soul, I'm like, I don't think I should be in Miami. Like I don't know what the fuck the feeling is. I'm like, I don't know what this is, because like Miami's supposed to be fucking healing for me this weekend, and like the hassle to get there is like so intense. April boards her flight. I decide to not go to West Palm Beach and then travel an extra 2 fucking hours, because like I'm like, that's just no. The next flight that I roll into books completely. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna like, no. Call my mom. I tell her everything. I tell her about the pigeon. I'm like, I think she's trying to talk to me. I don't know what the fuck she's trying to say. 2 minutes after I get off the phone with my mother, the fire alarm goes off in the airport and it's like, everybody evacuate immediately. Then someone comes on and is like, you don't need to evacuate, like whatever. But I'm like, the fire alarm's going off. I'm like, this is just so chaotic, so stressful. I'm like, is this what she's trying to tell me, to like go home? I'm like, why the fuck does my dead friend want me in New York so bad? Like, why the fuck does my dead friend not want me to shake my ass on a yacht in Miami this weekend like my plan was to do? So it's just been a weird day. I'm not that upset about the flights and stuff. I'm more like confused, because I'm like, what the fuck is this feeling that I have to be in New York this weekend, and why did I see my dead friend in the airport being a fucking pigeon? Like, I'm just confused, you know what I mean? I think anyone would be fucking confused in this situation. So it's just been like a chaotic and weird day. And I know she has something to tell me. I'm like, bitch, what are you trying to say? I have been talking to her a lot. I'm like, fuck these dumb men that you send me, bitch. What is that? And then I'm like, send me a good one, bitch. Send me a good one.
Clingy stalker story time. I met a guy on a dating app and I invited him over. We had a romantic dinner and then at the end of the night we hooked up. I wasn't looking for anything serious and it wasn't good, so I ghosted him. He had my number, my Instagram, and my Snapchat. Despite me telling him I wasn't interested, he kept trying to pursue me. I straight up told him no, that I wasn't interested and I wasn't looking for anything with anyone. Each day he would pester me asking what I was doing and who I was with. Regardless of this, I didn't reply. After weeks of him blasting up my phone, I blocked him and deleted the app. After I blocked his number, he hit me up on Instagram and Snapchat, sending me sexual pictures and telling me that I'm a player. I blocked him on those too. I gave it a couple months and then I re-downloaded the app. I had no profile picture, so I didn't think he'd know it was me. Just minutes later, after I logged in, he messaged me saying, I see you're online again. I didn't respond, and then he sent another message saying, I know where you live. That freaked me out, so I blocked him and deleted my account. Later that week, I was hanging out with a friend at my house. Someone started knocking aggressively at my door and turning the knob. It scared the crap out of us, but we went to go check it out. The backyard gate was open, so we called the police. They agreed that someone was trying to get in. I think he got spooked when we called the cops, because luckily I never heard from him again. This is why you should be careful who you swipe right on. I met this guy on Tinder and I wanted to meet in public, but he didn't want to. So one night I was bored and I went over to his house instead. I made sure to tell my friends where I was going and sent them my location. When I went to his house, we did the deed and I fell asleep. I woke up to see him going through my phone. When he noticed I was up, he asked why I had so many guys on my phone. I ignored his question and asked for my phone back. At this point, I was ready to leave, but my purse was gone. I tried to text my friend, but he had deleted all of my contacts, even my dad's number. I started to panic, but I quickly calmed myself down and tried to talk to him. He was twice my size, so I knew he could do some damage if he wanted to. I planned on sneaking out when he fell asleep, but he wasn't falling asleep. We stayed up silently laying in bed waiting for each other to fall asleep until 3 a.m. The next morning, I told him I had to go to work so I would need my things back. That's when he insisted on driving me to work and picking me up. On the way, I was planning on telling one of my coworkers what happened, but he came inside of the store and stayed there my entire shift, just watching me. When I was off work, he took me back to his place. I thought I'd eventually be able to get away from him, but 2 weeks passed and he still wouldn't let me out of his sight. Part 2 of why you should be careful who you swipe right on. During those 2 weeks, I didn't have anything. I had to wear the same clothes over and over or wear his clothes. Apparently, one of my friends noticed that I wasn't replying, so they messaged me on Twitter. Unfortunately, I was in the shower and he had gone through my phone and deleted the messages. Luckily, I was starting school, so I told him once again that I had to go. He did the same thing, insisting on taking me to school and waiting outside of my class. I left the classroom through the back door 15 minutes early and ran home. I was so scared that he would see me and follow me. He kept showing up at my house, so I didn't go outside for a week for any reason. Eventually, he went away. 2 months later, I moved across the country with my friend and everything was going great, until I got a text from an unknown number that just said, "I'm here now." When I asked who it was, he told me it was him and that he had moved 30 minutes away from me. He never came to find me in person, but he would text me all the time, and when I blocked him, he would just get a new phone number. This went on for about 2 years, and I ignored him the entire time. It's now been a year since I've heard from him, and I also moved back. I told my mom what had happened, and she tracked him down and saw that he also moved back. Now I'm always careful who I match with.